In the cold vacuum of space where empires rise and fall on the edge of plasma blades and energy shields, there exists a universal truth that every species learns. Never underestimate your enemy's weapons. The Keithmoran Empire had conquered 47 star systems with their advanced military technology, enslaving entire civilizations with weapons that could vaporize mountains and shields that could deflect asteroid impacts. Their warriors were bred for combat, enhanced with cybernetic implants, and armed with the most sophisticated weaponry the galaxy had ever seen. But when they encountered humanity's primitive projectile weapons on the backwater planet of Terra, their laughter echoed through the command ships.
Ancient rifles firing metal slugs? How quaint.
How utterly pathetic. The great Keithmoran war general Faxfor himself couldn't contain his amusement as he watched through his tactical display, observing human soldiers clutching what appeared to be museum pieces compared to their plasma cannons and photon rifles.
What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of making very small pieces of metal move very, very fast. And when you've mastered that principle, scaling it up becomes a matter of engineering, not impossibility.
The Keithmoran were about to learn why humans had a saying, "It's not the size of the gun that matters, it's how fast you can make it sing." The warning sirens of Luna Station pierced the artificial atmosphere as Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the massive viewing portal, watching the alien fleet materialize from hyperspace. 12 massive vessels, each one easily 3 times the size of Earth's largest dreadnought, hung in the void like metallic predators. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly blue-black material that seemed to absorb light itself, and energy patterns danced across their surfaces like living neural networks.
"Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez from his station. "Universal Translator is working on it now." Sarah adjusted her uniform and straightened her shoulders. This was it, humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. 300 years of dreaming, wondering, and preparing for this moment. She had hoped it would be under better circumstances, but the aggressive formation of the alien fleet and their sudden appearance in Earth's solar system suggested otherwise. "On screen," she commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a creature that seemed designed by nightmares and evolution, working in perfect, terrifying harmony. General Faxfor stood nearly 9 feet tall, his forearms crossed in what appeared to be a gesture of casual dominance.
His exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, and bioluminescent patterns pulsed along his elongated skull. 2 primary eyes, large and multifaceted like a predatory insect's, dominated his face, while smaller sensory organs dotted his temples. When he spoke, rows of crystalline teeth caught the light. "Greetings, primitive beings of the 3rd planet." Faxvor's voice rumbled through the translator, though something in the electronic rendering couldn't quite mask what sounded like amusement. "I am War General Faxfor of the Keithmoran Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our workforce. You will surrender your weapons, submit to our authority, and begin immediate relocation to designated colony worlds. Resistance is futile and will result in the sterilization of your planet." Sarah had rehearsed dozens of first contact scenarios during her military career, but none of them had prepared her for the casual arrogance in the alien's tone. She could feel the tension on the bridge as her crew processed the ultimatum. Behind her, she heard someone whisper a prayer. "General Faxfor," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your introduction, but I'm afraid we must decline your offer. Humanity governs itself, and we have no intention of surrendering our freedom to anyone." The alien's mandibles clicked in what the computer identified as laughter. "Admiral Chen, your species' courage is admirable but misguided. We have observed your primitive projectile weapons and combustion-based propulsion systems. Your technology is barely above stone tools compared to our capabilities." On cue, several screens around the bridge displayed what appeared to be reconnaissance footage of human military installations. Sarah watched with growing unease as the images showed Earth's armies, their rifles and tanks and fighter jets frozen in high-definition clarity. "These devices," Faxfor continued, gesturing with one of his secondary arms toward an image of a Marine holding an M4 carbine, "fire small metal projectiles using chemical explosions." "Fascinating from an archaeological perspective, I suppose. Our historians will be delighted to study such antiquated technology in our museums." More laughter rippled through the audio feed, and Sarah could see other Keithmoran officers in the background of the transmission. They were genuinely amused, she realized. To them,
Humanity's weapons were like bringing swords to a laser fight. Your plasma-based weapons, Sarah said carefully, are certainly impressive, but I think you may be underestimating human ingenuity.
Underestimating? Thax4's eyes seemed to brighten with mirth.
Admiral, we have conquered 47 star systems. We have reduced entire civilizations to cosmic dust. Our youngest warriors carry weapons that can vaporize your strongest armor from orbital distances. Your species builds weapons that require them to be within visual range of their enemies and pray that small pieces of metal can penetrate our shielding. He leaned closer to his communication device, and Sarah could see her own reflection in his multifaceted eyes. I will give you one of your planetary rotations to consider surrender. Use this time wisely. Perhaps study the fate of the Xenorian Confederation, or the Crystalline Hegemony, or any of the other species that chose resistance over wisdom. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sarah stared at the blank screen for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities and strategies. Around her, the command crew waited for orders, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and determination.
Ma'am?
Rodriguez ventured quietly. Sarah turned away from the viewport and looked at her officers.
Young men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth, now facing an enemy beyond their wildest nightmares.
But she had not reached her position by backing down from impossible odds. Lieutenant Commander, I want you to get me a direct line to General Harrison at Cheyenne Mountain. Tell him we need to implement Protocol 7 immediately. Protocol 7, ma'am? Rodriguez's eyes widened slightly. That's the theoretical contingency for technologically superior alien invasion. It's not theoretical anymore, Sarah replied grimly. Also contact Major Williams at Edwards Air Force Base. Tell her to prep the Valkyrie Squadron for immediate deployment. And Rodriguez?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell them to load the special ammunition. All of it. As her crew scattered to carry out orders, Sarah returned to the viewport. The alien ships hung there like dark angels of death, their weapons probably capable of turning Earth's surface into molten glass within hours. But Tax4 had made a crucial error in his assessment of humanity's capabilities. He had looked at their rifles and seen primitive weapons. He had observed their tactics and seen outdated strategies. What he had failed to understand was that humans had never stopped innovating, never stopped finding new ways to make war more efficient and deadly. The M4 carbine might seem primitive, but it was the descendant of thousands of years of weapons development, each generation building on the lessons of the last. And more importantly, Thax4 had never seen what happened when humans took their basic principles and scaled them up. Sarah thought about the prototype weapons systems hidden in classified facilities around the world, the projects that pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering. She thought about the men and women who had dedicated their lives to the art of war, who understood that the best weapon was not necessarily the most advanced, but the one that caught your enemy completely unprepared. Computer, she said quietly, run a tactical analysis of the enemy vessels. I want to know everything. Shield frequencies, weapon systems, propulsion signatures, communication arrays. Analysis in progress, Admiral. Estimated completion time, 43 minutes. Sarah nodded. 43 minutes to understand an enemy that had conquered 47 star systems. Under normal circumstances, it would be hopeless. But these were not normal circumstances. And humanity was about to give the Kethmoran Empire a lesson in the evolution of warfare. She thought about the Gatling gun, invented over 400 years ago, a simple concept that revolutionized combat by putting a lot of bullets down range very quickly. Richard Gatling himself had claimed his invention would make war so terrible that it would bring peace. He had been wrong about the peace part, but he had been absolutely right about making war more terrible. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the alien fleet. General Thax4 was about to discover that sometimes the most devastating weapon was simply an old idea with a very, very big upgrade. The countdown had begun, and in 24 hours, the Kethmoran Empire would learn why humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of making small pieces of metal move faster than the speed of sound. It would also learn why humanity's greatest military minds had never stopped asking one simple question: what if we made it bigger? Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General William Harrison stood before the largest tactical display he had ever seen. The holographic projection showed the entire solar system, with red markers indicating the positions of the 12 Kethmoran vessels. Around him, the most brilliant military minds on Earth worked frantically at stations that hummed with activity. Sir, we've completed the analysis of their shield technology, reported Dr. Elizabeth Park, the project's chief xenotechnology analyst. It's incredibly sophisticated, Appears to be some kind of adaptive energy field that can deflect or absorb most forms of electromagnetic radiation and directed energy weapons. Harrison nodded, studying the swirling patterns of energy that surrounded each alien ship.
What about kinetic weapons?
Dr. Tom Cranston. Park hesitated, pulling up additional data screens. That's where it gets interesting, sir. Their shield seems specifically designed to counter energy-based attacks. The historical records they transmitted show most of their previous enemies relied heavily on plasma weapons, particle beams, and fusion warheads. But kinetic weapons. She paused, manipulating the display to show cross-sectional analyses. Their shielding appears to have minimal adaptation for high-velocity physical projectiles.
Meaning they've built their entire defensive system around fighting enemies that use the same type of weapons they do, Dr. Park explained.
It's like showing up to a gunfight wearing armor designed to stop swords. Harrison allowed himself a grim smile. What's the status on Protocol 7 implementation? Major Patricia Williams stepped forward from her station.
All systems are green, sir. The Valkyrie squadron has been prepped and is standing by.
We've loaded every rotary cannon system we have with the new tungsten carbide penetrator rounds. The Air Force has also moved 3 of the experimental GAUD
19/B platforms to strategic positions. And the special project? Major Williams' eyes lit up with something that might have been anticipation.
Big Betty is ready, sir. The engineering team finished the final calibration 6 hours ago. She's fueled, armed, and ready for deployment. Harrison turned back to the tactical display, his mind running through the calculations they had spent years developing in theoretical scenarios. The Keth Moran had made their ships large and powerful with shields designed to absorb enormous amounts of energy. But there was an old military axiom that applied to any conflict. If you couldn't go around something or under it, sometimes the best solution was to go right through it. General. Dr. Park interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving additional intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations. The aliens are conducting what appear to be training exercises with their weapon systems. The display shifted to show footage captured by Earth's most advanced telescopes.
Harrison watched as one of the alien vessels fired a brilliant beam of coherent energy at a small asteroid. The rock simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even dust remained.
Plasma cannon, Dr. Park explained. Estimated power output equivalent to a 50-megaton nuclear warhead, but with surgical precision. They can delete anything they can target.
Range?
Approximately 100,000 kilometers with that level of precision. Their effective range is probably much greater. Harrison whistled softly. Earth's most advanced weapons had effective ranges measured in dozens of kilometers. The technological gap was staggering, but as he watched the demonstration, he noticed something interesting. Play that again, he ordered. Slower this time. The footage replayed in slow motion. The alien ship oriented itself toward the target, energy patterns building along what was obviously a primary weapon system. Then came the discharge, a brilliant spear of superheated plasma that crossed the void and obliterated the asteroid. There, Harrison pointed at a specific moment in the sequence. Did you see that? Right after they fired, there's a brief power fluctuation across their entire shield grid. Dr. Park enhanced the image, focusing on the energy patterns surrounding the alien vessel. You're right, sir. The shield system appears to divert power to their weapons during combat. There's a window of approximately 2.3 seconds where their defensive capabilities are reduced by nearly 40%. 2.3 seconds, Harrison mused. How long does Big Betty need for target acquisition and firing sequence? Major Williams checked her tablet. With the new targeting computer? 1.8 seconds from acquisition to impact, assuming the target is within optimal range. And what's her optimal range with the new ammunition? 12 kilometers, sir. 15 if we're willing to accept a slight decrease in accuracy. Harrison turned away from the display and looked around the command center. Young officers and seasoned veterans worked side by side, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. They were preparing to fight an enemy that possessed technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities. By every rational analysis, they should surrender. But Harrison remembered something his grandfather had told him about facing impossible odds. The old man had been a World War II veteran, a Marine who had fought in the Pacific Theater against an enemy that seemed invincible. Billy, he had said, the thing about bullies is they always expect you to fight fair. They design their strategy around facing enemies who think like they do. But sometimes, the best way to win is to fight a completely different kind of war. Major Williams, Harrison said, I want you to personally brief the Valkyrie squadron. Make sure they understand the mission parameters. Yes, sir. They're good pilots, General. The best we have. They'll need to be. Dr. Park, I want continuous monitoring of those alien vessels.
Any change in their positions, their energy signatures, anything at all.
Understood, sir.
Harrison looked back at the tactical display, where the red markers representing the alien fleet hung in space like the sword of Damocles over Earth. Somewhere up there, General Faxfor was probably conducting his own analysis, confident in his technological superiority and dismissive of humanity's primitive weapons. The alien general had made several assumptions that were about to prove costly.
First, he had assumed that Earth's military technology was limited to what his reconnaissance had observed. Second, he had assumed that humans would fight the same kind of war that every other species in the galaxy had fought. Energy weapons against energy weapons, shields against directed beams.
But humans had learned warfare in a different school. They had spent millennia perfecting the art of hurling projectiles at high velocity, from spears and arrows to bullets and artillery shells.
And when they had reached the limits of what chemical explosives could achieve, they had not stopped innovating. General, a communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the International Space Station.
Commander Petrov reports that several of the alien vessels are moving into closer orbital positions. Display their new positions." The tactical screen updated, showing 3 of the Kethmoran ships descending to a lower orbit around Earth.
They were positioning themselves for what was clearly intended to be a demonstration of power, close enough to target specific military installations, close enough to make their superiority unmistakably clear. Harrison smiled.
Close enough to be within range of humanity's most carefully guarded secret. Sir? Major Williams noticed his expression. Major, the enemy has just made their first tactical error. They're moving into our engagement zone. Should we begin the operation? Harrison checked the chronometer on the main display. 18 hours remained until the alien ultimatum expired. But Dax-4 had positioned his forces for maximum psychological impact, bringing them within range of Earth's defenses. The alien general wanted to demonstrate his power, to show humanity the futility of resistance. He was about to get his demonstration, but it would not unfold as he expected. "Contact the Valkyrie Squadron," Harrison ordered. "Tell them to begin their approach vectors. And Major?" "Yes, sir." "Make sure Big Betty is ready for her debut. It's time to show our guests that humans have learned a few things about warfare in the past few centuries." As the command center erupted into controlled activity, Harrison reflected on the irony of the situation. The Kethmoran Empire had conquered 47 star systems using advanced energy weapons and adaptive shielding. They had studied humanity's rifles and dismissed them as primitive curiosities. What they had failed to understand was that every human weapon, from the first sharpened stick to the most advanced missile system, was built on the same fundamental principle. Accelerate a projectile to the maximum possible velocity and put it exactly where you want it to go.
The aliens were about to receive a physics lesson delivered at 3,000 rounds per minute, and the professor would be a machine designed by humans who understood that sometimes the most elegant solution was also the most devastatingly simple one.
Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the controls of her modified H-6, 4X Apache, as she led the Valkyrie Squadron through the pre-dawn darkness.
Below her, the lights of major cities dotted the landscape like scattered jewels, but her attention was focused on the heads-up display showing the approach vector to their target coordinates.
"Valkyrie leader, this is Mountain Base," crackled General Harrison's voice through her helmet comm.
"Target is maintaining position at 15,000 meters altitude. Confirm your weapon status." Elena glanced at her weapon systems display, where green lights confirmed that Big Betty was armed and ready. The experimental rotary cannon mounted beneath her helicopter was unlike anything in the standard military arsenal. Where a normal Apache carried a 30 chain gun, her aircraft had been modified to accommodate something much more ambitious. "Mountain Base, this is Valkyrie leader. Big Betty is green and ready. All systems nominal." She switched to squadron frequency. "Valkyrie Squadron, sound off. Valkyrie 2, ready. Valkyrie 3, systems green. Valkyrie 4, locked and loaded." Elena nodded with satisfaction. Her squadron consisted of the most experienced combat pilots in the Air Force, each flying a heavily modified Apache equipped with the new tungsten carbide penetrator rounds. But only her helicopter carried the special payload, the weapon that military engineers had spent 3 years developing in absolute secrecy. "Mountain Base, requesting final confirmation on target specifications. Valkyrie leader, target is the lead Kethmoran vessel, designated as Alpha 1. Intelligence confirms it's their command ship. Shields are active, but remember the vulnerability window we discussed." Elena studied her tactical display, where the alien command ship appeared as a massive signature hanging in Earth's upper atmosphere, The vessel was approximately 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapon systems that could vaporize her squadron without effort. According to the briefing, its shields could deflect nuclear weapons. But shields designed to stop energy weapons had never been tested against a stream of tungsten carbide penetrators traveling at 1,500 meters per second. Understood, Mountain Base. Beginning approach sequence. The Valkyrie squadron climbed through the darkness, their stealth modifications masking them from most detection systems. Elena hoped those modifications would work against alien sensors as well, but there was no way to be certain. Everything about this mission was untested theory and desperate innovation. As they reached optimal altitude, Elena activated her advanced targeting system. The experimental computer began analyzing the alien vessel's position, movement patterns, and the energy fluctuations in its shield grid. According to Dr. Park's analysis, the Kethmoran shields operated on rotating frequency cycles, with brief moments of reduced effectiveness. Mountain Base, we have visual contact with the target. Beginning final approach. Through her night vision equipment, Elena could see the alien ship in all its terrifying majesty. The hull seemed to absorb light, making it appear like a hole cut out of the star-filled sky. Energy patterns danced across its surface like bioluminescent creatures in deep ocean trenches. Weapon ports along its sides glowed with barely contained power. Valkyrie leader. Be advised that the target has begun some kind of scanning sequence. We're detecting increased electromagnetic activity from their position. Elena's threat warning system remained quiet, but she could feel a subtle change in the air around her helicopter. Something was probing them, analyzing them, perhaps dismissing them as insignificant. All Valkyrie units maintain formation and prepare for engagement sequence. Remember, we only get one chance at this. The targeting computer chimed softly, indicating it had achieved lock-on. Elena watched as probability calculations scrolled across her display. The system had analyzed thousands of variables: wind speed, atmospheric density, target movement, shield fluctuation patterns, and determined the optimal moment for engagement. Target acquired, she reported, initiating firing sequence in 10 seconds. Below in Cheyenne Mountain, General Harrison watched the engagement unfold through real-time satellite feeds. The Valkyrie squadron appeared as tiny blips on his display, insignificant insects approaching a metallic giant. The disparity in size was almost comical, like watching sparrows attack a battleship. Sir, Dr. Park reported, the alien vessel is conducting what appears to be a detailed scan of the approaching aircraft. Their sensor array is fully active. Harrison could imagine the scene aboard the Kethmoran command ship. Alien sensors detecting primitive aircraft equipped with projectile weapons. Crew members perhaps chuckling at the futile gesture. The enemy would see helicopters carrying kinetic weapons and dismiss them as a negligible threat. They had never encountered Big Betty. Valkyrie leader, Harrison spoke into his microphone, you are cleared for engagement. Show them what human engineering can accomplish. 15,000 meters above the Colorado Mountains, Elena Vasquez squeezed the firing trigger. Big Betty awakened with a sound like the world ending. The experimental GAU 19/B rotary cannon was a monster of human engineering. A 6-barreled weapon system that fired .50 caliber tungsten carbide penetrator rounds at a rate of 3,000 rounds per minute. Each projectile was a masterpiece of metallurgy and physics, designed to punch through armor that conventional weapons could not touch. But the true innovation was in the ammunition itself. Each round contained a depleted uranium core surrounded by tungsten carbide, the entire projectile engineered to maintain structural integrity at velocities that would shatter normal bullets. When fired from Big Betty's electrically driven system, these rounds achieved muzzle velocities that approached the theoretical limits of chemical propulsion. The effect on the alien command ship was immediate and catastrophic. The first burst of rounds struck the Kethmoran shields just as the energy grid entered one of its vulnerability windows. The tungsten carbide penetrators, moving at nearly twice the speed of conventional ammunition, punched through the weakened defensive barrier like needles through silk. Elena watched in amazement as her targeting display showed impact after impact against the alien hull. The tungsten carbide rounds, designed to defeat the heaviest armor on Earth, tore through the alien ship's outer plating with devastating efficiency. Target hit. Multiple impacts confirmed, she reported, unable to keep the excitement out of her voice. Aboard the Kethmoran command ship, chaos erupted as alarms screamed throughout the corridors. General Faxfor stared in disbelief at damage reports flooding his tactical displays. Impossible readings showed that something had penetrated their shields and was systematically destroying primary systems. Weapons Master Kethfall, report. Faxfor's mandibles clicked with agitation. General, we are under attack by the primitive aircraft. Their projectile weapons are somehow penetrating our defensive grid. Impossible. Our shields are designed to deflect asteroid impacts.
Sir, these projectiles appear to be moving at velocities we did not account for. They are striking during the brief moments when our shields cycle to recharge the primary weapon systems. Thaxfor felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Genuine surprise. The humans had studied their defenses, identified a weakness, and exploited it with surgical precision. But surely this was a fluke, a lucky strike that could not be repeated. He was wrong. Elena had unleashed only the first burst from Big Betty. The targeting computer continued to track the optimal firing windows, and the rotary cannon continued its mechanical symphony of destruction.
Round after round of tungsten carbide penetrators hammered the alien vessel, each impact precisely timed to strike during moments of shield vulnerability. Valkyrie 2 through 4, begin your attack runs. Elena commanded.
Target their weapon systems and propulsion arrays. The other 3 helicopters moved into position, their conventional chain guns loaded with the new penetrator rounds. While their weapons lacked Big Betty's devastating rate of fire, they could still exploit the shield weaknesses that Elena's attack had revealed. The night sky lit up with muzzle flashes as the Valkyrie squadron unleashed everything they had. Streams of tungsten carbide rounds converged on the alien command ship from multiple angles, overwhelming its defensive systems through sheer volume of fire. General Harrison watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The alien vessel's energy signatures were fluctuating wildly as critical systems failed under the kinetic bombardment. Sections of the ship's hull were venting atmosphere, and several weapon systems had gone offline. "Sir, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the alien command ship," reported a communications officer. "Put it through." General Thaxfor appeared on the main display, but he bore little resemblance to the confident predator who had delivered his ultimatum hours earlier. His exoskeleton showed stress fractures, and bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically across his features. "Admiral Chen," he said, his translated voice strained with what might have been pain, "we demand an immediate cessation of hostilities. Your weapons are in violation of galactic warfare conventions." Harrison stepped forward, his expression impassive. "General Thaxfor, I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm General Harrison, and I'm afraid I don't recognize any galactic warfare conventions. Earth isn't a signatory to any such agreements. Your kinetic weapons are primitive and barbaric. Civilized species do not employ such crude tactics." Harrison smiled coldly. "General, you came to our star system and demanded our surrender. You threatened to sterilize our planet if we resisted. I'd say that makes you the barbarian in this situation." The transmission flickered as another burst from Big Betty found its target, and Thaxfor's image wavered. "This attack will not go unanswered. We have 11 other vessels." "I'm aware of that," Harrison replied calmly. "Which is why this demonstration isn't over yet." Above Earth's atmosphere, the Valkyrie squadron continued their assault on the alien command ship. Big Betty had fired over 6,000 rounds in less than 3 minutes, each tungsten carbide penetrator finding its mark with mechanical precision. The alien vessel, designed to withstand the most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy, was being systematically destroyed by what its crew considered primitive kinetic projectiles. Captain Vasquez checked her ammunition counter and smiled grimly. Big Betty still had plenty of rounds remaining, and the alien shields were failing catastrophically under the sustained bombardment. "Mountain base," she reported. "Target is severely damaged and appears to be losing structural integrity. Requesting permission to continue engagement." Harrison's response was immediate. "Continue firing, Valkyrie leader. Show them what human ingenuity looks like when properly applied." But the lesson was just beginning. The remaining 11 Cathmoran vessels moved with predatory grace through space, converging on Earth's position with weapons charging to full power. War Commander Zethkai watched the tactical displays aboard the secondary command ship, his 4 eyes reflecting the glow of combat readiness indicators. "War Commander," his tactical officer reported, "General Thaxfor's vessel has gone dark. All communication has been lost." Zethkai's mandibles clicked with barely contained rage. The humans had somehow damaged their flagship, possibly even destroyed it, using primitive kinetic weapons. The very thought was an insult to everything the Cathmoran Empire represented. "Scan the area for the attacking vessels," he commanded. "I want every primitive aircraft in that region reduced to molecular dust." "Sir, we're detecting 4 small aircraft maintaining position near our previous coordinates. They appear to be the same type that attacked the flagship." 4 aircraft, Zethkai mused, his voice dripping with contempt. 4 tiny machines with projectile weapons managed to damage a Cathmoran battleship. Either our intelligence was catastrophically wrong, or these humans have hidden capabilities we failed to detect. He moved to the primary weapons console, where energy readings showed their plasma cannons approaching full charge. "Target the aircraft and fire at will.
then begin orbital bombardment of the surface military installations. It's time these primitives learned the consequences of defying the Empire. But as the alien fleet moved into attack formation, they were unaware that humanity's demonstration was far from over. In hidden locations around the globe, installations that had been carefully concealed from alien reconnaissance began to emerge from their camouflaged positions. Project Prometheus, a classified program that had consumed billions of dollars and the efforts of the world's finest engineers, revealed itself for the first time. At Edwards Air Force Base, massive hydraulic systems raised a structure that defied conventional military architecture. The installation resembled a cross between a radio telescope and an artillery piece, with a barrel nearly 50 meters long pointed skyward. Similar installations emerged from underground positions in Nevada, Alaska, and the Australian outback. Mountain Base, this is Firebase Alpha, reported Colonel James Mitchell from the Edwards installation. Prometheus 1 is online and ready for engagement. General Harrison studied the tactical display as reports came in from around the world. Firebase Beta, reporting ready. Prometheus 2 is armed and locked. Firebase Charlie online. Prometheus 3 ready for firing sequence. Firebase Delta reporting all systems green. Prometheus 4 standing by. Harrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Project Prometheus represented the culmination of humanity's understanding of kinetic weaponry, scaled up to proportions that would have seemed impossible just decades earlier. Each installation housed a railgun system capable of accelerating projectiles to velocities that approached orbital speeds. All Firebase stations, this is Mountain Base. You are cleared to engage targets of opportunity. Show our visitors what happens when humans decide to think bigger. Colonel Mitchell initiated the firing sequence for Prometheus 1, watching as capacitors that had been charging for hours released their stored energy into the railgun system. The magnetic field generators hummed to life, creating a corridor of precisely controlled electromagnetic force that stretched the length of the 50-meter barrel. The projectile loaded into Prometheus 1 was a masterpiece of human engineering, a tungsten carbide penetrator weighing nearly 200 kilograms, designed with aerodynamic properties that would allow it to maintain structural integrity during atmospheric transit. When accelerated by the railgun system, it would achieve velocities that conventional chemical propulsion could never match. Prometheus 1. Firing. Mitchell announced. The railgun discharged with a sound like thunder, launching its projectile at nearly 20,000 meters per second. The tungsten carbide penetrator punched through Earth's atmosphere in seconds, leaving a brief streak of ionized air in its wake. War Commander Zethkai had approximately 3 seconds to register the incoming projectile on his sensors before it struck his vessel. The impact was catastrophic beyond anything in Kethmoran military experience. The tungsten carbide penetrator, moving at velocities that turned kinetic energy into something approaching nuclear force, punched through the alien ship's shields as if they were non-existent. The projectile traveled the entire length of the vessel, destroying critical systems and leaving a perfectly cylindrical hole in its wake. Impossible. Zethkai stared at the damage reports flooding his displays. Our shields should have deflected any kinetic weapon. His science officer, a creature whose cybernetic implants flickered with diagnostic data, provided the devastating analysis. War Commander, the projectile was moving at approximately 6% of light speed. At that velocity, the kinetic energy approaches the threshold where our defensive systems cannot compensate. Zethkai felt something approaching panic as he processed this information. The humans had not 6 months after the Battle of Earth. The galactic political landscape had shifted in ways that would have seemed impossible before humanity's first contact with the Kethmoran Empire. In the great council chambers of dozens of civilizations, military advisors delivered briefings that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and technology. On the crystalline world of Zirion Prime, High Counselor Velfar studied holographic displays showing the wreckage of Kethmoran vessels that had been recovered from Earth's solar system. The damage patterns were unlike anything in their extensive military databases. Perfectly cylindrical holes punched through armor plating that should have been impenetrable. Shield generators destroyed by weapons that shouldn't have been able to touch them. Explain to me again how this is possible, Velthar requested, her crystalline features reflecting the blue light of the tactical displays. Chief Military Analyst Krendok manipulated the hologram to show cross-sectional damage analysis. Honored Counselor, the humans appear to have solved a fundamental problem that has limited kinetic weapons throughout galactic history. Traditional projectile weapons are limited by chemical propulsion. You can only make an explosion push something so fast before the explosion destroys the projectile itself. And the humans overcame this limitation how?
Electromagnetic acceleration counselor. They built weapons that use magnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to velocities we thought were impossible for solid matter. Some of their larger installations were launching projectiles at 6% of light speed. Velfar's crystalline matrix flickered with what passed for amazement among her species. 6% of light speed? That would generate kinetic energies comparable to our most powerful fusion warheads. Precisely, counselor. But concentrated into a point no larger than a single crystal formation.
The Kethmoran shields were designed to dissipate energy across their entire surface area. They had no defense against that level of kinetic force concentrated into such a small impact zone. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in the war rooms and strategic planning centers of every major civilization. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had taken a technology that every species considered obsolete and evolved it beyond recognition. In the vast hive complexes of the Zephyrian Collective, Queen Mind Zestheta processed reports from her military castes with growing unease. The Zephyrians had built their entire military doctrine around energy weapons and defensive shields, just like every other advanced civilization. The idea that kinetic weapons could pose a threat to modern spacecraft was laughable. Until Earth happened. Queen Mind, reported warrior caste Prunhexelan, our analysis of the human weapons reveals something disturbing. They appear to have developed these systems specifically to counter shield-based defenses. Zestheta's compound eyes focused on the tactical data streaming through her neural interfaces. Elaborate. The humans studied Kethmoran technology for less than one planetary rotation before the engagement. In that time, they identified weaknesses in shield systems that our best military minds have never considered. They then deployed weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses.
You're suggesting the humans developed these weapons in a single day?
No, Queen Mind. The evidence suggests they have been developing kinetic weapons for centuries, constantly refining and improving them. When they encountered an enemy with energy shields, they simply adapted. This revelation sent ripples of concern through the galactic intelligence community. Most civilizations developed their military technology in response to immediate threats. The humans appeared to have been preparing for wars they had never fought, against enemies they had never met, using principles that other species had abandoned millennia ago. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt command center of Luna Station, watching as construction crews completed work on the new defensive installations. The past 6 months had seen an unprecedented expansion of human military capability funded by technology trades with the dozen alien species that had approached Earth seeking defensive partnerships. Admiral, reported Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to her strategic planning staff. We've received another request for a technology demonstration. The Altarian Republic wants to see our defensive systems in action. Sarah nodded, studying the latest intelligence reports.
Word of humanity's victory over the Kethmoran had spread throughout the galaxy with remarkable speed. Species that had never heard of Earth 6 months ago were now sending diplomatic missions and trade delegations.
More importantly, they were asking for protection. What's the status of our new installations? All Prometheus sites are operational. Admiral,
We've completed construction of 12 additional railgun platforms, and the orbital defense network is ahead of schedule. The USS Devastator has also completed her shakedown cruise. Sarah pulled up a tactical display showing the solar system's new defensive architecture. Orbital platforms armed with railguns created overlapping fields of fire around Earth and its colonies. The asteroid belt had been converted into a fortress of hidden weapon systems and automated defense drones. Any hostile fleet entering human space would face a gauntlet of kinetic weapons firing projectiles at relativistic velocities.
And the special project? Captain Rodriguez smiled. Project Mjolnir is proceeding on schedule, Admiral.
The engineering challenges are substantial, but our teams believe they can create a ship-mounted railgun capable of accelerating projectiles to 15% of light speed. 15%, Sarah mused. At that velocity, we're talking about kinetic energies that could crack a moon. Yes, ma'am. The physicists are calling it a planet-killer weapon. Sarah turned away from the display and looked out at the stars, where the lights of human colonies twinkled in the darkness. Humanity had evolved from a single planet species to a major galactic power in less than a year, and the transformation was far from complete. The irony was not lost on her. For centuries, science fiction writers had imagined humanity's entry onto the galactic stage. Most had envisioned scenarios where humans would be the primitive newcomers struggling to catch up with advanced alien civilizations. Instead, humanity had discovered that their primitive approach to warfare was actually centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Trade Consortium. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations.
Sarah smiled.
The trade consortium represented over 200 species controlling commerce across thousands of star systems. 6 months ago, they had never heard of humanity. Now they were seeking formal treaties. Put them through, Captain. The holographic display showed a being that resembled a cross between a jellyfish and a flower, its translucent form pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that the translation system rendered as formal diplomatic language. Admiral Chen. I am Trade Prime Luxandra of the Galactic Consortium. We wish to discuss mutual defense agreements and technology sharing arrangements with your species. I'm listening, Trade Prime. The galaxy faces numerous threats. Pirate fleets, rogue AI networks, predatory empires like the Kethmoran. Your species has demonstrated defensive capabilities that could benefit all civilized worlds. We propose a partnership. Sarah had expected this conversation. Intelligence reports indicated that several hostile species were already adapting their tactics in response to human kinetic weapons. The galaxy was entering a new arms race, and everyone wanted humanity on their side. What exactly are you proposing? Defensive installations based on your kinetic weapon technology, deployed at strategic locations throughout consortium space. In exchange, we offer access to our fastest hyperdrive technology, our most advanced manufacturing techniques, and material science that could improve your weapon systems. Sarah considered the offer carefully. Humanity had won their first galactic conflict through technological surprise and superior weapons engineering. But maintaining that advantage would require constant innovation and expansion. Trade Prime, I'm willing to discuss your proposal, but understand that any technology sharing arrangement must be reciprocal and fair. Humanity didn't survive first contact by accepting unfavorable deals. Of course, Admiral. We would expect nothing less from the species that turned kinetic weapons into galaxy-changing technology. As the transmission ended, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since General Faxvor's arrogant ultimatum. The Kethmoran Empire was in retreat, their expansion halted by species who had acquired human defensive technology. Pirates were avoiding systems known to have kinetic weapon installations. The balance of power throughout the galaxy was shifting, but perhaps the most significant change was in how other species viewed warfare itself. For millennia, galactic military doctrine had focused on energy weapons and shield technology. Civilizations competed to build more powerful plasma cannons, more resilient energy barriers, more sophisticated targeting systems. Humanity had shown them a different path. Instead of building more complex energy weapons, humans had perfected the simple art of making objects move very fast. Instead of developing stronger shields, they had created weapons that punched through any barrier through sheer kinetic force. The result was a fundamental shift in galactic military thinking. Species that had abandoned kinetic weapons centuries ago were dusting off old designs and trying to understand human engineering principles. Research facilities across the galaxy were working frantically to develop electromagnetic acceleration systems, but they were already years behind. While other civilizations struggled to understand the basics of railgun technology, human engineers were working on weapons that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Project Mjolnir was just the beginning. Classified research programs were exploring concepts that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Admiral Chen turned back to the tactical display, where green indicators marked the positions of Earth's growing fleet. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not as supplicants seeking advanced technology, but as innovators whose primitive weapons had revolutionized warfare itself. General Faxvor had dismissed human rifles as obsolete curiosities suitable only for museums. He had learned, in the most devastating way possible, that humanity's greatest strength was not their individual weapons, but their relentless drive to make those weapons better, faster, and more effective. The galaxy would never make that mistake again. Humanity's rifles might have seemed primitive, but the civilization that built them was anything but. They were engineers who looked at every problem as something to be solved through innovation and determination. They were warriors who never stopped asking the simple question that had changed everything: what if we made it bigger?
The answer to that question was now lighting up the night sky around Earth, in the form of orbital defense platforms that could reduce battleships to debris in seconds, and research facilities working on weapons that could reshape the balance of power among the stars. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, and it would be built on the foundation of a simple truth that every species now understood: never underestimate the humans and their kinetic weapons.
After all, they had turned museum pieces into galaxy-changing technology. What they might accomplish next was limited only by their imagination and the laws of physics. And as every alien military planner was beginning to understand, humans were very creative when it came to finding ways around inconvenient physical limitations.